Hey, Geek. So let's talk about something that I think a lot of people who are gamers probably know about or probably have been thinking about for a while. And it's basically this whole idea of console games are dead or they're heading that way. And I did have some thoughts on that because I've been gaming ever since the days of Atari. So I remember the days of console games up until today's modern gaming landscape. So let's talk about the first and obvious thing because back then, console games, to me, they were very, very special because at the time, you having a console game, I kind of feel it was something that a lot of people didn't all have. Okay. It's not like today where having a game console is nothing new, like back then, it was a big deal, especially since these consoles even if you adjust it for inflation, they were pretty expensive, to be honest with you. And that was something that I definitely felt myself. I and my friends, we had to either beg our parents, who most of the times didn't have enough money to get these for us, or we'd have to be really patient and wait. And hopefully, we would get it for a Christmas gift or birthday or something. Or if you were able to, you would go work. You try to find some type of jobs that you could do as a kid so that you could save up money to finally get these game systems. And that's kind of how it went for me. And then later on in life, as I was able to afford these consoles, I would later trade them in for newer consoles. That's kind of what it was. And so, yeah, gaming back then was very special because not everybody had it. It was something that was more limited. And then to go along with that was where we were at in technology. And so game consoles back then, there were huge, huge leaps in technology. When you would go from an Atari to a Sega Master System Nintendo to a Sega Genesis to a Super Nintendo, and then later to things like the PlayStation 2, the Nintendo 64, and then, Dreamcast, PlayStation 3, Xbox, Xbox One, all of those things, there were huge, huge technological leaps, and you could clearly see that. And that is something that really doesn't exist today in our modern games, at least not to those levels. And so that added another level of specialness to the whole idea of gaming consoles. And then obviously it comes to the games. So I would say, modern games today, they are obviously still a lot of great games, but they had one thing back then that we don't have as much anymore today, and that is basically exclusivity. So if you bought a PlayStation console, you were going to get some games that you wouldn't be able to get anywhere else. And similarly, like something like this, the Sega Dreamcast, it was really something for you to have a certain system. If you had a Nintendo 64, this was the only way that you could get Super Mario 64 or Mario 64. And then if you wanted to play the latest Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear Solid 2, the PlayStation 2 was the only way. Plus, the PlayStation 2 also had a DVD player, which was a big deal. And so that was something that added to this whole idea of having a console. There was a really, really huge reason for you to have one console over another because of the game exclusivity. And especially if I remember with the original PlayStation, I think a lot of people would buy that just because Final Fantasy was on it, or buy a Nintendo system just because the latest Mario game, Zelda, was on there. And then later with the Xbox, you would get Gears of War or Halo, and you kind of get the idea. Whereas nowadays, well, it's not like that anymore. There is still exclusivity, especially on Nintendo game consoles, but it's nowhere near what it used to be. Which leads me to the other thing is that gaming nowadays, it's accessible in so many different ways. The console nowadays is not the only way for you to game, whereas back then it really was. Even though PC gaming was there, It wasn't anywhere near what it is today. But today you have console gaming, PC gaming, you have emulation, you have your mobile devices. It is not hard at all for you to play a game however you want to play it. And obviously, we have the internet now, which leads me to the other, probably the last big thing, and kind of why I kind of feel this whole idea of console gaming is pretty much dead or heading that way really quickly. And it's this whole idea of online. Being online, your games are attached to it. Okay, even if you have a physical copy of your modern games today, more often than not, most newer games are going to require some type of online component. Even if it's not completely being online just to play the game, there's things like patches, updates, verification to make sure you own the game. And then also, a lot of people don't buy physical games. A lot of the games are digital now. Even if you go to the stores, you get a QR code to download the game whenever you buy it and own it, whatever the case that means. And I think this is one case where Microsoft, they were really ahead of their time. And I think a lot of game companies knew this, but Microsoft really knew this because whenever the Xbox One came out, they had a requirement initially to be online, meaning that they would do checks to make sure that your system is valid, your Xbox Live account. There were so many checks using their online system to allow you to play your own game system. And back then, it was absolutely crazy, for a game system to require some type of online connection. But today, well, that's exactly what we do now. You actually have to be online in some way. And Sony, as a matter of fact, is probably one of the worst with that when it comes to authenticating or when it comes to restrictions and stuff, and I kind of feel it's completely backwards, because back then when Sony saw this, they took advantage of it and said, hey, you don't need an online connection. You could still, let your friends borrow your games, own your games. But now they're the complete opposite of that. They're going the other way. It was so funny. And I would say Xbox was leading the pack on that. And then, with all of that being said, you could see that the overall idea of ownership of your games, it is basically becoming dead as well, especially if you have majority of your games online, which most people do. If it's not any of these bigger companies, it's going to be Steam, okay, or the Epic Store, or the Ubisoft Store. There's so many ways in which people game, but so much of it is online, and so much of it is controlled now by these companies. And a good example of that is, just say, for example, you have a Steam account, right? You've purchased hundreds of games, maybe thousands of games, but then your account, for whatever reason, gets locked out. They either suspend your account or you completely lose your account. Well, you just lost all your games. And similarly, with all these other game companies, these big game companies, they can lock you out of your own system if they wanted to. And that's something that wasn't there back in the past. Because back then, as long as you have your game and then a console that works, which didn't require an online connection, because back then, you didn't have the internet like we do today, then you could still play your games. And it's still the same today, where as long as you still have these physical games and the physical console that actually works, you could still play your games. Whereas with modern games and gaming going forward, that's not going to be the case, because honestly, you really don't have control. You don't own your games. And that's not going to change in the future. I don't think so, because that's what these companies want. And at the same time, that also really hurts this whole idea of owning game consoles. I think if you were to think of general excitement for gaming, most of it is going to be in PC gaming. But at the end of the day, there is basically this whole idea of just the game itself, which is the most important thing, is the game. But even more so now, if somebody wants to play a game, it's really not, oh, which console should I get? It's more like, where can I get it at? And that's kind of how I feel about gaming consoles nowadays. I feel that for a lot of people, it might be dead or it's heading there. And I don't think there's anywhere we're going to go backwards to that. And probably the last game console, besides Sony, that offers a lot of what we kind of remember back in the day is Nintendo, because they still have a lot of exclusive games. And so they're probably the closest, I would say, to the gaming console of the past, mainly because of that exclusivity. But other than that, yeah, that's where we are with gaming. I wish we could go back to the days of gaming consoles where it really was something special and something exciting, and you just couldn't wait till the next console came out so that you could get the latest exclusive games for these systems. So, if you actually had any thoughts on this, be sure to leave in the comments area below, and I'll see you on another episode. Hey geeks, if you are a brand new creator and you simply want something easy to get you started, well, I got something for you with my Creator Starter Kit. This is a super simple step-by-step guide that's going to take you from having no channel to developing your very first YouTube channel, along with ideas, thumbnail designs, and other creator tips, including marketing. And the best part is, all of this is free. Simply head over to the link below, check out my page, and get started creating.